Hi, my name is Phil. I'm the owner of Hilltop Garage, and we are fortunate enough to be able to specialize in the restoration of these first-gen Cummins. So I thought today I'd take a couple minutes to show you one of my own first gens. This one has been about 6 years in the making. It started out as a 1984 Royal SE two-wheel drive, 360 automatic. Basically what I kept from that truck was the cab and the rear doors. The rear doors, this truck had moldings, and the bottom of the doors where the moldings, where the clips go, where those little studs are, it was pretty soft. So I bent new bottoms, welded them in, and my body guy Jeremy, who painted the rest of the truck, he fixed them up really nice and straight. The rockers and the floor pan, never been touched, sandblasted. It was a really solid truck, considering we are in Quebec, Canada, so a lot of salt, a lot of corrosion. That's probably one of our biggest issues, is to find good solid sheet metal. The front doors are genuine Chrysler that I'd had in storage for years, as well as the front fenders. And the hood, well, I have a weakness for bird bath hoods because my first truck, a 77 Power Wagon, of course, had a bird bath. So I wanted to include it in this project. So what have I done to modify this truck? What haven't I done? To start, we took the frame all apart. Absolutely every rivet out of it, sandblasted, epoxy primer. But just before we sandblasted everything, I had set this truck up with a regular dually box. But then I found a step side long bed and a complete truck, a 73 Adventurer. I bought the truck sight unseen, and when I got it home, it had a 9-foot step side box. So those trucks, the wheelbase was 4 inches longer to accommodate the 9-foot box. So what I ended up doing was I sectioned the frame somewhere here, and I back halved it with an 8-inch Cummins first-gen frame. So by doing that, I gained my 4 inches of wheelbase. So the truck is now 169-inch wheelbase. So the bed sides, I'm still waiting. They're at the body shop. But the floor, it's cherry wood that my dad and I cut probably 20 years ago, and it was just rough lumber in the shed. So I finished that, and I actually cleared it with the same clear that we cleared the body with. So that's why it's short. We cut it into 8-foot, and that's why it's lacking here. So I made an aluminum panel because the exhaust is a little special. And at my shop, I kind of specialize in exhaust systems as well. So I made a splitter box that has an air cylinder that will split to put the exhaust up through the stacks, which are straight pipe. Then there's no mufflers in front of it. So 4-inch system, 4-inch stacks. And the stacks, the elbows that I bought, will include some still pictures. But the elbows that I bought, I really wanted to mimic a Little Red Express look, as in the angle of the tailpipe. So found those at Traction. And splitter box, and I go through 4-inch straight through stainless mufflers. So basically like a big MagnaFlow, 2 of them. So there's one there. I come over the differential, and then it's a center exhaust then, so another muffler here, and it dumps down. There's an elbow. So when I pull my camper, the exhaust will shoot out, center dump, and not get the camper dirty. The next thing, this is probably what makes this truck the most unique, aside from the box, is the drive line. So I bought a 6BT from an airport, a real industrial VE pump, and it had an air compressor on it when I bought it. So I thought, with an air compressor, why not put a transmission in there that requires air? So the truck has a Road Ranger RT613. It's something that I had in stock out of one of our old tow trucks. Disadvantage, they're noisy on the road. Downshifting them is not a joy, anybody who's ever driven one of those. And no overdrive. So I then found some 307 gears from a first gen. So the truck's 307s, 35-inch tires. It should be decent on the highway. I would have preferred an overdrive transmission, but that's what I had, so that's what I worked with. So out the back side of the transmission, I then installed a divorced NP205. And that was pretty much it. Obviously a Dana 61 front and a Dana 71 rear. A few things I made traction bars for it. I installed a rear sway bar off a Ford, Super Duty, don't tell anyone. And re-arched my springs, put some airbags. And the joy of the airbags, of course, with this, having the air compressor on board, you can play with them as you wish and adjust those. Make my own hitch. Cross members for the box, instead of putting spacers, well, I just bent steel the appropriate height, so nothing looks terribly modified then. The cab, I had to put a 3-inch lift on the cab, and I actually had to do quite a bit of work to the transmission tunnel on the floor to fit the 13-speed, even with the 3-inch body lift. So at the same time, I made the transmission hump removable, so like the old trucks, so it bolts in, and handy, because I just recently we went down to Florida, and I stopped at Pro Gear, and I bought the newer style shifter, the splitter. So that's not a bolt-on job. You've got to reroute some hoses on the transmission, change one of the cylinders. I changed the shift tower at the same time, so it's nice and tight and crisp shifts now, and I just preferred the look of the newer shifter. I'll show you inside. Okay, so I'm sitting in the truck now, and I'll just give you a quick run through of the gauges that I've added. So voltmeter, vacuum gauge,
sorry,
and the pyro for the exhaust temperature, and then a boost gauge, which doesn't seem, I don't know, I haven't worked at it too hard, but it's got a nice pinkish light in it. I would like to change it to a blue one, but that doesn't seem to be a serviceable part. Oil pressure and temperature. As many gauges as possible are mechanical gauges. And then, of course, the air pressure in the overall system. And then that's the lower one. And this is the airbags, a dual needle, because the bags are hooked separately. And of course, this console thing that I built, it's not mounted securely yet, and there's a lot of stuff behind that with all the airlines and everything. It looks like I'll have to make some type of boot. I don't know, you know, there's all these little details to finish up. Of course, the overhead console with CB Cobra LTD 29. I don't know, it's probably something we won't even use, but I just like the looks of it. My grandfather used to run those when I was a kid, so I thought it was a nice touch. Door panels, again, something that I went to the fabric store. My wife's a member there, nosing around one day, found this type of, well, it's like a button tuck material. So I decided to make some inserts, and they turned out quite well. I used like a 1/8 plywood for backing. I got some nuts that are made to, they've got little fingers that bite into the wood. So mounted those, So they would be like on this side, and then I use the stock holes because originally anyone who's taken some of these door panels apart, you'll know that it's like a plastic rivet that's just melted over, holds the insert to the door panel. So anyway, these ones are bolted from the inside through those existing holes. And then the back, of course, is the stock door panels, which seem to be super hard to find, that they aren't all busted up. And the seats, Little Red Express style, with the buddy seat in the center. That big subwoofer is just sitting there. I don't know what to do with it. It's a little too big. Really like the sound, but it's too big. These seats out of a 70s Dodge van, and the reason that I went with those was they have the same stitch pattern as the low back buckets from a Warlock or Little Red Express. So again, just trying to match parts up together that were never originally together to make it look like it was born that way. So the running boards, I bent them out of stainless just because I wanted to hide the fact that the body was lifted, and there's whatever, the frame is nice and clean, but it's not that great to look at. Back here I need to finish my brackets to hold that. So what I did was I used 18 gauge stainless because it's something that I can bend in shop, and I made brackets underneath, and I put a piece of hardwood so that, you know, reinforces the step. But obviously, as my kids know, we can't step on these. I mean, we could, but we shouldn't because it'll scratch them. So I bought these little steps. They're actually for a boat. Again, eBay. Stainless steel with a nice little rubber insert. And another reason that I wanted to use those was there are no, you can't see any hardware that mounts these. The only thing you'll see are the small little bolts that go into the lip of the rocker panel. So I have a bracket underneath that is bolted to the piece of hardwood, or bolted, it's screwed to the hardwood. And then these little steps there, they're screwed down into the hardwood. So there's no fasteners, nice and smooth. Here, as you can see, I haven't put my sill plates in. And the reason, not quite done inside, of course. I have stock ones, several of them. But I don't know. I have a customer that does some powder coating. I was considering having them powder coated, but I might just bend some out of the same stainless as the running boards, kind of tie everything in together. We'll see. Jake brake decals, as well as C-body Dodge decals for the front fenders. Again, they fit there. And I have a C-body, modified four-wheel drive puller that my dad and I used to campaign. And I always liked those crests, so included that in the design. 20-inch mags. I didn't want an aggressive tire because, let's face it, I won't even drive this in the rain. So this is a real, yeah, it'll be spoiled for sure. So why have something that's, you know, big choppy tire, loud on the road, and throw stones, which obviously I don't like that. It's hard on the paint. Under the hood, well, I just pulled the injector pump off because I was not happy with how this truck was starting. So pulled it out. It's off at the shop now, getting checked out, as well as the injectors. The injectors were new, but I said, you know, let's check those out too while they're out. Truck has air conditioning. I upgraded to not an HX35. Everyone upgrades to an HX35. I went to a WH1C. Basically the same turbo, a little more user-friendly, I think. Made my own stainless pipe here for the air. Made a mount for my K&N, suck air through the fender, which is another thing that the purists will not like. So I incorporated a scoop off a Toyota MR2 into the fender. I just thought, you know, let's be different. I like it. I think it's functional. Usually if it's on some of my builds, there's a reason for it. Another detail that no one really notices until you tell them, and then even then it's hard to see. Due to the 3-inch lift on the body, I doubled this panel. So I basically took another one, cut some of it off, flipped it over. I had to notch it here. I'm running a 6-liter Ford intercooler, so I had to build these boxes in here for clearance. I had to clearance the bottom of the grill, but it's a jobber grill, so that fits all right. So then the bumper. These bumpers, they never fit well from the get-go. So what I actually did was I cut the bumper into 3 pieces behind these bumperettes. I tried to correct the angle as much as I could. But what I did to make it fit more was I cut 2 inches out of each side. I actually narrowed the bumper 4 inches because obviously with the shape of the body, the way it curves in, when you lift the body 3 inches, the bumper sticks out even more. So I narrowed the bumper in, cut my plastics, hard to tell. Now, sticking with my theme of everything horizontal lines on this truck, I chose some LED headlights. Those are the daytime running light part of it. The driving lights, flush mount LEDs, just to stick to that look. Now what I'm starting to build now is a stainless skirting under the bumper. No, it will not end like that. I want it to curve around the corner and to kind of match the running boards, probably come up close to the fender here. I just like the look of a deeper bumper. I'm kind of going for the big rig look with this truck. And all of my vehicles have a spoiler under the bumper. I just like the look of it. Little touches, you know, little things like a Dodge emblem off the back door of a 70s Dodge van. So just to show you a couple more things under the hood, I replaced the fusible links with a fuse box from Blue Sea, Safety Hub 150. Yeah, that's one of the joys of life is wiring. However, I think it's probably well worth the effort, and a really well made fuse box. Bent a bracket, bolted it to it, and that should look after that problem. Another it's hard to see there behind the lines, but the master cylinder for the clutch. This cab being 1984, of course, was made for a rod clutch. My transmission, that 13-speed, was set up for a rod, but nothing would work. Even going through pivots, it's because I had to push forward on the fork on the transmission, and there was just no way to make it work. So what I did was I bought a master cylinder off a Volvo, a big semi, because they're made to mount, maybe I can get it underneath here. They're made to mount to a 45-degree surface. I can't, yeah, you can see it there a bit. So I used the rod off the clutch pedal that I modified, and it pushes on the master, and then I went to a heavy cylinder underneath, like off a Dodge, but a bigger series, like a C800, 900, and that works really well. It turned out really well. So another thing, this is the vacuum pump off a 4BT, V-belt driven. Oh yeah, the radiator. So anyone with an intercooled first gen that decides they're going to put a bird bath hood, there's one thing that gets in the way, and really in the way, and that's the radiator cap. So what we did was we plugged the hole, removed the radiator cap. I was servicing a customer's Dakota one day with a 3.9, like a 2003 Dakota. And I said, look at this, radiator cap is in the hose. So I ordered that, and you've got to modify the hoses a bit there to make them fit, but that moves the cap back, the hood shuts fine. Another thing, abortion steering shaft, steering column, wonderful. Everybody who has a first gen should really go to that. had another buddy that found a guy that was able to bend these heater pipes out of stainless. And the guy's out of Montreal somewhere, I don't know him, but he does really nice work. Even the blocks, stainless. Turned out that's from Stefan. Thank you, Stefan. Really, really nice pieces there. At the back, you'll see there's a solenoid. That runs my exhaust brake. So, vacuum powered. This is an actual pack brake. I bought a 2nd gen P-pump with a NV4500, and it had this exhaust brake on it. So I'm running a 2nd gen turbo, the exhaust brake. Found this solenoid on eBay, and so it's an electric over vacuum solenoid, and that's what the old Jake brake switch in the dash is hooked to, and works really well. Quite surprising. I've tried this truck on the road a few times, even though the box isn't done, and it's not a true Jacob for sure, like the Thunder brakes that everybody was hoping would get produced, but helps quite a bit. So I guess that's about it for under the hood modifications. Oh, the fuel pressure gauge. How many times have we hooked one up to see what's going on with these VE pumps? So I'm going to run a fuel pressure gauge all the time because I'm running, I've been playing with lift pumps, and the lift pump I'm running now is pushing about 9 PSI. So I think we'll leave it there. The other gauge that I have that I need to install, and again, my cowl plate there, the cover is still at the body shop, but I got rid of some of the grill because it's grill all in the center. So I welded a piece of it solid, bent a plate, welded it in. So I'm going to have my fuel pressure gauge as well as an exhaust pressure or exhaust back pressure gauge. So both of those gauges are not supposed to be ran inside the cab. So they're going to be mounted in front of the windshield. So this is the whole set air compressor, cover driven, and it drives a hydraulic pump. So this, for the power steering, this was on the engine when I bought it. This is off a Sterling that had a 5.9, and this reservoir, I bought a Ford F700 with a 6BT. So I took the reservoir from that, pump from the Sterling. The intercooler pipes are aluminum, and they're from the Ford 6-liter. I hate to say it, but you know what? I'm not as racist as I was. So I just find the Ford boots are really well built, and I like the idea of the aluminum piping, and I'm equipped to weld aluminum, so I shaped it around the compressors and whatnot. The fill tube for the oil in the engine is actually off the F700. Extends up quite a bit, which is really nice with the body lift. And I bought a vacuum pump, a V-belt driven vacuum pump off of 4BT. So obviously you need the vacuum for your power brakes and your heater controls on this truck, being a AC truck. So, it takes quite a bit of time to research and decide what you want to do, what you want to put, where to get those items. But the beauty of the Cummins, the B-series Cummins, is all the adapters you can buy, and the fact that they were used in so many applications. If you get to know those applications and you think about it, you can build anything with those, any transmission, fit it in any chassis. So I like them, and I feel that one of my employees has a Ford with a Cummins in it, and we bug him about it all the time because he's a Ford guy, but it doesn't really matter what it is. I have a cousin, we put a Jimmy together for pulling for him, compound turbo 6BT and a Jimmy. So it's the fun of it. I think they're super reliable engines, and that's why we specialize in those. Yes, the Dodges, we've been into that for years, and I have all the parts. you know, if there's one for sale around, I pick it up. And you need that, of course, when you specialize in those. And again, the sheet metal is hard to find here, so good sheet metal. I'll show you here the fenders. These were on the 9-foot box when I bought it, and they're fiberglass. But again, it's because the steel fenders are hard to find. But on this, they'll be fine. Jeremy sprayed a black bed liner inside them to try to cushion up the stones. And the paint is actually 1970 Chrysler Vitamin C, to which I went to my paint supplier, and Martin, the paint mixer, came up with a couple recipes. I explained to him what I was looking for. I wanted something that flashed a little more. So there's a gold pearl over the vitamin C. And it's unfortunate that it's not sunny out today, because it's quite something. It's quite labor intensive, and I'm really happy that Jeremy's doing the box sides, because he did the rest of the truck. And like he told me, to get the effect that I wanted, there's a coat and a half of the pearl. So that's the thing when you get into these custom paints, is you've got to have the same guy spray them, or it's going to show. You know, if you put too heavy or too light of a coat with that gold pearl, it'll really stand out. So super happy that he's doing that. He did the tailboard for me. This is a new tailboard I bought. I don't know if this is going to stay there. I'm just fooling around with these letters. This I'm pretty happy with. I think that will stay. But I also have a nice logo that I bought. It says it's Road Ranger equipped. So again, by having the Road Ranger equipped decals and the Jake Brake decals, I'm just trying to, you know, fool some people into thinking that this really came that way. I don't know if it'll work. Now I'll try to make this as smooth as possible, but it's hard rolling around underneath this. But so that's the big industrial oil pan. Holds 17 liters of oil. Of course, the transmission. Here's another interesting thing. So the front drive shaft is actually a rear drive shaft from a regular cab long box Getrag equipped truck. Fits right there. So another issue was, how do you support the transmission? Because in the bigger truck application, there are motor mounts off the bell housing. The transmission just kind of hangs there. So here what I did was I made a plate that bolted to the last housing of the transmission. And I actually used a motor mount, a spool type mount off a 2nd gen. And the cross members for drive shaft clearance, what I did was I took cross members from a 2-wheel drive pickup with a 4-speed transmission. And I cut one end off and extended the other end out. And then these braces, well, I used stock braces from different applications and cut them so they would fit. So I have 2 of those cross members, and I actually used another one to mount the spool mount for the transmission. So anyway, we'll see how that works. So the transfer case here, another cross member that I made the brackets that bolt to the frame. And in the middle of the truck here, what I did was I had a plate of steel bent, and that fit in there just as smooth, just as tight as could be, fitted in. And then I used you know, whatever mounting holes that we were going to use anyway to pinch that in there. All the holes that we did not require for anything, you know, that weren't required, I welded them up. So the frame is all smoothed out. Air horns, why not? Again, we have the compressed air. So mounted the air horns. I have a valve under my seat. I added a second battery here and made a box for that. Back on the frame, so I'm underneath the passenger's rear door. Traction bars that I built, what I ended up using was a rear shackle from a Chevy pickup. And in here, the front mount, I machined a piece of pipe and I pressed in a spring bushing at each end. So, looks pretty stock-ish. Bolts, I basically made a bracket that bolted to the bottom of my U-bolt, so they're double nutted. So there's the setup, how I mounted the traction bars in the rear. Looks like that bolt should be tightened too. So again, the sway bar off the Ford fit right there, really nice. I had to build these brackets here that bolted again to two existing holes that were already in the frame, and I think the rear bar came off a F350, and these link kits, I believe they're off a Ford as well, but off the front end of a 550, if I remember right. Anyway, it's just, you know, as we would service other vehicles in the shop, you always keep your eye open for things that you could use, maybe. And that's it. That's how we get our stuff. When you get into this custom stuff, I mean, it's a good thing. Good thing we're not building this for a customer, because the hours, I roughly kept track. I think we're right around 1,500 hours now. And yeah, it's quite a bit, but I'm happy with the result. One more thing before we go, I'll show you. Had some t-shirts made. This is my first. So this is my actual Ram Charger, and had these t-shirts made by Excel Sportswear. Patty's the woman that looked after that, and so happy with their design. So shout out to Patty. Really happy, got them just a week before Christmas, and they've been going like crazy. And we'll be doing more business with her because I'm out of several sizes. So anyway, maybe this video and these t-shirts, I'll have to hire another guy. Who knows? All right, thanks for watching.